that introduction. And my roommate, Miss you. I'm grateful for being here, and thank you for inviting me to share this chapter. It actually gives me the opportunity to focus on the chapter I've been working in with the lockdown and everything affected people in different ways. So today I'm going to be talking about a chapter on the piracy question in my thesis. Now, what we have discovered is that the impact of COVID-19 pandemic brought with it lockdown restrictions worldwide. Numerous people have been confined to their homes for weeks on end. Globally, the creative industries have seen a surge in activities. Many have turned to television and to the internet for entertainment to ease the boredom associated with the lockdown. Now, this new development raises questions regarding the type of content being viewed. What type of content are people accessing? Are they accessing paid for services? Or are they accessing content from unauthorized or unlicensed sites? Therefore, this is an excellent time to examine the concept of piracy using evidence from the results of studies carried out. Now, in this chapter, we seek to establish that piracy is economically harmful to the film industry in Nigeria. To substantiate this argument, I will engage with a body of literature on piracy to understand what piracy is and how it works. There will be some attempt to measure piracy as a statistical phenomenon. Now, studies from the United Kingdom and from some countries in Europe have carried out excellent studies on piracy. And the trends and lessons learned from these studies will be interpreted in the Nigerian context. Finally, workable solutions that could aid in curbing piracy in the industry will be discussed. As an outline, I will first of all start with talking about the background to the paper, give you a general information of what the film industry is in Nigeria. I'll talk about the legal framework. I will define piracy. I will talk about the problems of piracy in the film industry in Nigeria. Then we go on to the studies on the piracy, and I will conclude and offer my recommendations. Now, I'm starting with some statistics as regards the Nigerian film industry, which we call Nollywood, just like you have in Hollywood or Bollywood. Now, it is said to be one of the most robust creative industries in the world. Now, UNESCO has given us some statistics saying it's the third largest film industry regarding films produced. However, this does not translate to any economic benefit or any real economic benefits. 1,500 movies are produced annually in Nigeria. When we talk about revenue and employment, it is the second largest employer of labor in Nigeria after agriculture. Again, there's really no corresponding revenue to show for this. Now, we have realized that there is an apparent loss of revenue. So this research will examine how Nigerian copyright law can support the film industry as the flagship of its copyright industries, and in turn, ensure a higher return on investment and create revenue for the country by adding to its gross domestic products. The legal framework. So we are looking at the film industry through intellectual property law, and in particular copyrights. Now, the Nigerian Copyright Act says that a film is a work that is eligible for copyright protection with the producer as the owner. However, the issue of copyright is contentious. Now, what is piracy? Many of us have heard of the term piracy. Now, when a fellow PhD student then, but she's graduated now, contacted me about giving a cartoon of my thesis. This was a perfect representation. Now you see the pirate standing over a pot of gold, which should belong to Nollywood. So the pot of gold is there, but it's not going down to the stakeholders. So as we think about pirates violently overtaking the ship or vessel of another, is the same way pirates have overtaken the efforts of the stakeholders in the film industry. We can define piracy as theft or pillaging of copyrights. Now, it includes reproduction of physical replicas and also virtual reproduction of copyrighted materials, which includes peer-to-peer service or file sharing, which is very common in Nigeria. Then also illegal streaming. We would like to compare briefly piracy with copyright infringement. Now, it has been said to be a slang for copyright infringement, but what we have discovered that is similar but not identical. Now, all piracy is copyright infringement, but not all copyright infringement is piracy. Now, if we take the example of J.K. Rowling and the suit brought against one Steven Van der Dark, and she won. Now she had brought a suit because he decided to publish a lexicon, which was a book of several words and spellings from her famous book series, Harry Potter. Now, the author argued that the publication would do her irreparable harm, and the court agreed that Mr. Steven Van Dark was going to take substantially from the Harry Potter book. However, in this case, the defendant was not actually reprinting and selling the actual Harry Potter books. What he was doing was an act of copyright infringement, but not an act of piracy. Now we go on to Nollywood and the problems of piracy. We're going to look at it from three different angles. The first one is the impact on DVD sales. When Nollywood started, we had what we call the classical Nollywood era. In this era, it was the DVD sales that was well, DVD was the prevailing way of watching films at that time, and there was a report that for every legitimate copy sold, 9 of them were fake. So you can see the high level of piracy at that time. Now, Section 20 sub 1 of the Copyright Act places criminal liability on such unauthorized reproduction. We will go and see a solution to this problem, which we call self-policing. Well, we'll talk about it again in my conclusion. Now, the impact on audiences and in the cinema. Now, we have seen that piracy really strives in scarcity. So in the cinema in Nigeria, it is really for the elite, for the people who are very rich. So for the common man, he doesn't have a way to go to the cinema. And what solution have we said we can bring up to try and make sure this is not the case? We have said that there should be what you call community viewing centers in major cities across Nigeria. Now, this will bring the cinema official screening, legitimate screening, closer to the audience. Now, this is akin to viewing centers we had in the 1980s. In the 1980s, you had little kiosks or little houses, little huts, and people would go and pay a small amount of money and view a film. But this was against copyright issues, and most times even what they may be viewing may be pirated movies. But we're talking about legal ways which will be affordable and cheaply available at subsidized rates. Now, the impact on subscription to streaming services. Now we have internet and streaming platforms like Netflix, which many of us know, and Iroko TV, which is similar to Netflix, but it's really for the African continent. These streaming platforms have diluted piracy, we agree. However, in Nigeria, availability to access to the internet and high cost of data hinders streaming. So what happens? The people still go back to look for illegal reproduction of downloaded things. Usually they go after sites which offer free streaming of Nigerian movies, and as a substitute, many people have on their telephones, on their mobile phones, 1 or 2 movies which they now do phone-to-phone file transfer. Remember, we said that is one of the ways which we have one of the definitions of piracy, file-to-file sharing. And we go on and look at the studies. The IPO, that's the Intellectual Property Office in the UK, has carried out an online copyright tracker. Now, this study was commissioned and financially supported by the UK Intellectual Property Office. Now, we understand that researching copyright infringement and digital behaviors is complex. The ways in which consumers access and share copyright materials online change regularly, and infringement levels are notoriously difficult to measure. Now, this report, which has gone on for 9 years, details the findings of large-scale consumer tracking study on copyright infringement, as well as their digital behaviors across the United Kingdom. It is a consistent study on piracy. The researches undertaken are legitimate and they are robust. It takes the attitudes and behavior from a cross-section of about 5,000 people. Now, the key is that it enjoys credibility, as this study has been adopted in other jurisdictions. Obviously, they see some value in it. Now, more recently, in the era of COVID, they brought up there was the digital culture consumer tracking study. It's released by the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Center, which also builds on the IPO online copyright infringement. Now, the 6 ways of the study took place between the 9th of April and the 20th of May, and the results, the full report was recently released in August. Now, the report showed that illegal sources to access to the continent has only changed marginally. Like on the onset, people were actually downloading illegal sites, but it remained consistent and even decreased in most categories. Now, the results of the study is of interest in digital copyright because some of the findings are not consistent with what we assume, or with recent headlines indicating the increase in access to infringing materials. That is not the case from the findings of the study. Now, other studies across the United Kingdom and Europe, and even in Nigeria that we looked at, showed that copyright law is really ineffective in controlling piracy. Some of others said that the drastic changes in the law, if there are drastic changes in the law, it will only have a limited short-term change, and everything will go back to as it was in the first instance. Now, Agula et al. Brought about a study in Germany, which came up after an illegal site was shut down. Now, what happened was that people didn't go and begin to assess legal sites, but they went after other unlicensed video sites. So we have seen that the law, the hard hammer of the law, may not really be the situation. Then some other study has said that we should make infringers aware of licensing options. The options to illegal streaming. and give them the options, give them the pricing, give them, let them know maybe if the pricing options are marginal compared to accessing illegal sites, then it might be an option for them. Then this Adum et al. Was a study carried out in Nigeria, and it showed that infringers favored corrective measures over punitive measures. So while we always assume that a hard hammer of the law will bring a change, it may not always be the fact, especially with the studies, as we have seen. In conclusion, I will want to say that the more complex or nuanced an industry is, the more difficult it will be to get legislation that will be a fix-all to all the multifaceted problems, especially in a case like Nigeria. Nigerian's film industry is an informal one. It has many different levels. We have the marketers, we have the guilds, everything. It's a strata. We have also different types of Nigerian factors that will affect what will happen in what will be successful in other countries. So we have to think about that. And also, we have a gap in Nigeria in that we do not have reliable statistical numbers as we have in the UK, for example, the IPO study. So we have analytical evidence on the attitudes of piracy, but we do not have statistical numbers, reliable ones. In conclusion, I will give my recommendations that we may look at graduated type responses or policy, as we had the Hadopi in France as a way of dealing with piracy. We can go on with education or awareness campaigns. Heavy criminal penalties may come in if necessary, but as Elder Haber put it in his copyright book, Criminal Copyright, it will depend on enforcement and not solely on legislation. So it can be on its own. Then we can have memorandums of understanding with other agencies treating piracy as an economic crime. Now we have the economic an agency which does economic crime in Nigeria, and it has signed an MOU with the Copyright Commission, which is the regulatory body of copyright in Nigeria. And we feel that if they are brought in to help, it might help in dealing with piracy. Then from the studies we had examined, there are about 10% of the individuals who were under the study said they will still infringe, they will still pirate, they will still access illegal sites. So what do we do with that 10%? So it might be a business model. We can look at what I have termed pirate share. Is a way of accepting the percentage of loss as a shrinkage, just as we have in the in the commercial industry, where they accept a certain percentage as a loss. So if this percentage can be accepted by some of the stakeholders and put it into their profit margin, maybe when signing contracts with streaming bodies like Netflix, then it might be a solution to this piracy issue. Thank you. Before I round up, this is really the case in Nigeria. I will end with this quotation by Liam Snicket Hodash. Just because something is traditional is no reason to do it, of course. Piracy, for example, is a tradition that has been carried on for hundreds of years, but that doesn't mean we should all attack ships and steal their gold. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. That was